Welcome to Second Saturday Conversation, where we explore Christianity in and for the 21st century. I mean, what a task, but we have made it ours. A quote from Amos Wilder, I think, speaks to our task. Amos Wilder, by the way, was the elder brother of writer Thornton Wilder. And Amos Wilder was an accomplished poet. He was a champion tennis player, and he is most known as a New Testament theologian. His birth and death dates are 1895 to 1993. So Amos Wilder writes, "The church," and I might include Christianity on this, okay? The church, or Christianity, is reshaped in inseparable relation to the general imagination of the time. Every age is marked by its own imaginary. So every age must reimagine what God is doing in its own time. In other words, each age has its own imaginative vision of the world, and therefore we must revise our theology accordingly. What Wilder calls us for us is, to us, is the renewal of the religious imagination. And he thinks that that renewal of imagination, which we need in our time, is imperative for the biblical witness. So here on Second Saturday, we wonder, what is the imaginary of our time? How must we engage Christianity because of it? I think our imaginary, our imagination, our vision of the world is affected by technology, by science, by our environmental crisis, by the arts. And I will say that we are also, our imaginary is being affected by an imperial duress, like the imperial duress of the 4th and 5th centuries, when Constantine invoked the name of Jesus to justify his injustices. Constantine proclaimed one order, one emperor, one empire as a call for unity, and did so using Christianity as a kind of justifying overarching narrative. And we've seen that play out in history. And I think we're seeing that being played out now in Christian nationalism. And that's not the kind of reimagining that Wilder or I, or we here on Second Saturday have in mind. Our overall program title for this year is Through a Glass Darkly, More Numerous of Windows, Superior for Doors. And here I pair St. Paul from 1 Corinthians and a poem by Emily Dickinson. St. Paul says, we see through a glass darkly. He goes on to say, we see only in part. We know only in part, he says. So the dark glass is an acknowledgement of our non-knowing. I mean, we know quite a bit about this and that, but we basically don't know and actually never will know and fully comprehend the mystery of our existence. The mystery of existence. We know in part. And this dark glass is actually a good thing. It is an admission of our limit, and we do so with humility. And this non-knowing can actually open us to possibility that we hadn't thought of yet. So non-knowing is actually the entrance to possibility that, as Dickinson says, is numerous of windows, superior for doors. It's a call to the creative imagination. We know in part. We're people who walk in darkness. Today, I'm going to talk about the season of Advent. Whoops, did I just disappear? Here we go. I'm going to talk about the season of Advent. This is the season in the liturgical year of the Christian calendar right now. I also think this is a season that calls us to non-knowing, but we'll explore that. But first, let me turn to my friend and colleague, Jeff Creswell, and he will orient us to our plenary time, which is the time that I'm looking forward to hearing from you about what you make of some of my thoughts. And he will orient you to how to enter plenary. Morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Marianne, and welcome everybody. It's lovely to see all these little tiled faces.
Tiled, did you say?
Tiled faces,
Tiled.
yes.
Right.
So, as Marianne said, we'll be entering a plenary after she has shared her thoughts with us. And that's a time for you to interact with Marianne and the community through your questions, your comments, your observations, your reflections. And the way that we handle that is that we ask that you go down to the bottom where you'll see a little heart that says react. And if you click on that, and there's an option to raise your hand, and a little hand will show up on your screen. And that will let me know that you'd like to say something. We invite you to compose what it is you'd like to say before you raise your hand, because it's really easy to sort of think out loud and take a little more time than we have. And so if you would keep what you have to say to a succinct 2 minutes, then more people will be able to interact, and we'll have a richer time in our plenary. If you go over that 2 minutes, which I'll just keep track, you'll just see me put up a little finger like that, which is my gentle way of reminding you that it's time to bring your comment to a close so that we can hear from other voices. So thanks, Marianne.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Advent, as I said, it's a season in the Christian liturgical worship year. And it's the beginning of the church year. So this is our New Year's. We have 7 seasons: Advent, Christmas Christmas is a short season, Epiphany, Lent, Easter, Pentecost, ordinary time. And these reflect the narratives of Jesus' journey throughout his life and death. So throughout the year, we follow Jesus' journey, and we experience some things that he's experienced, how people were responding to Jesus. We hear Jesus' stories and parables, and so we get a sense of the landscape of his life. The seasons of the liturgical year, it's the tradition's way of kind of framing that journey and identifying some themes that emerge from different seasons in Jesus' own life. And the tradition was also well aware that what Jesus experienced and wondered about in terms of God and relationship to world and empire and how we treat one another and all of that, that those are also experiences and wonderments that we have. So the seasons of the church year call us to journey in the narrative of Jesus in his landscape. And it also invites us to look at the lifelikeness of what he's experiencing in our own lives. The seasons of the church year call us to reflect on our own inscapes as distinct from landscapes. Inscape is a word by Gerard Manley Hopkins, but sort of our interior experiences, okay? So, and I think that's part of the genius of the Christian tradition, that we recognize that Jesus' journey is also our journey. Jesus was a human being fully alive, as Irenaeus, a church father, has described him. And we are called to be human beings fully alive as well. So we look to Jesus' journey as a kind of map or even an interior reality for ourselves, interior and exterior reality. The tradition was also very aware that the early Christian stories relied heavily on an imaginary vision. The language of early Christianity was figurative and metaphorical, and drew from myth and dreams and symbol and art. The stories are not journalistic reports about Jesus. They are more literary in style than literal. We have had a tendency in the modern period to think of to look for the literalness of these stories. Their intent was never that. They are more literary in nature and character than to be understood literally. And they are a mixture. The narrative of Jesus is a mixture of what Marcus might say is history remembered. Okay, there is a historical context for Jesus' life, and Jesus was an historical figure. So the narratives are history remembered, and maybe not altogether factually or accurately. And also the scriptures are an expression of history metaphorized, is the way that Marcus puts it. That the narratives also seek to suggest meaning. They're suggestive, they're evocative, they are intended to engage our wondering and our imagination. And the scripture stories, the narratives of Jesus, they are not propositions. They're not to establish beliefs and doctrines. That all comes much later. Okay, and we tend now, I think, to read the Christian narrative, the Bible, with these with presuppositions in place. Knowing how the tradition said, well, this is what this means, or this is who Jesus is, or and then we call him certain things: King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Jesus is Savior of the world. All of that reflection that comes later. The narratives that we hear, even though they were written decades after Jesus' death, as I said, they're more literary than literal. So I just want to remind us of that. And let me quote again from Amos Wilder that I think speaks to what I'm just trying to describe. I've quoted this to you before, but again, this is from Amos Wilder. Before the message, he says, the vision. Before the sermon, the hymn. Before the prose, and here I'll tack on propositions, the poem. So an experience that evokes the imagination precedes the message. For instance, the message of the kingdom of God. It is imagined. What would the world be like if God's ways were everywhere, right? I mean, what the kingdom of God comes from an imaginative vision. Okay, the message, people will say that the message of Jesus was the kingdom of God, but before the message was a vision, an imaginative seeing, a sense of realization. It's like if you can imagine it, it's possible. Okay, so before the message, a vision. Before the sermon, a hymn. It's almost like the heart, the soul, our being hears, if you will, a kind of maybe, this may sound like a bit much, but a kind of musicality in life. There's a song that we come to sing. There's a sense about the nature of life that then gives rise to a sermon. But as he says, the sermon, but before the sermon is the hymn. It's this imaginative experience, and a felt experience precedes it. And same true for prose and poetry. Poetry, the making, the creating of creative aspect of language to try to express something that is sometimes difficult to express. Okay, poetry is often used when you can't say it any other way. Okay, and then we reflect more, and then comes the prose. So before the prose, the poem. So Wilder is suggesting that the biblical vision, and that our witness to the biblical vision requires in us this kind of imaginative understanding. And that all plays into his saying every era needs to have an imaginative, a reimagination in light of the context of the lives that we're living, but to keep in mind this sense that the message, that before the message, the vision, that before the sermon, the hymn, before the prose, the poetry, the poem. Okay. So that the scriptures and the biblical witness comes out of more of a poetic, imaginative space, not a propositional space. And so to use language that I've sort of hinted at over these recent sessions, that our biblical witness is more theopoetic than theologic. Okay, the theologic comes later, but the imperative is the poetic. Okay, so I'm just throwing that out there to love to know how you hear what I'm suggesting here. Okay, so Advent. Advent means to come. It's from the Latin adventus. Actually, we get a word adventure from that too. And Advent calls us to hope and dream and wonder about that which is to come. Okay. But the to come is not prediction. Okay. I'm reminded of what Yogi Berra said, that it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future, he says. So Advent is not about trying to predict the future, because that's, in a sense, we're playing with what we already know. As an aside, let me say that if I were to predict what our political situation is going to be in the next 6 months, based on what I know now in terms of the new administration coming in, I'd freak out and say it's catastrophic. Okay. And that might be a fair prediction, but that's not the kind of to come that Advent is inviting us to. The to come of Advent is about keeping the future open. It's acknowledging that we do not know what's coming. It acknowledges an unforeseeable future, which leaves open surprise or novelty or the unexpected or that which we really haven't dreamt of yet, or even the impossible, which acknowledges that the to come of Advent and the to come in our lives, it is a risk. I mean, it holds promise, a dream, a hope, but there's also a threat, because there's actually no guarantee. So there's also some fear and trembling in our excitement and anticipation. when we enter Advent, or when we are dealing with the to come that Advent speaks of. It's been said that the highest desire of the human heart is to keep the future open. I think that's an interesting comment, that the highest desire of the human heart is to keep the future open. A quote here, "Our lives are structured by hope and expectation, by something to come, which summons up the deepest energies of our imagination." And I wish I could tell you who said that. I came across that quote. It may be David Miller, but our lives are structured by hope and expectation, by something to come, which summons up the deepest energies of our imagination. Okay. Now, I will say that, imagination has a dark side. Okay. But I want to invite us to consider imagination a really important capacity of the human heart and soul and being, which has everything to do with our present and with our future in a good way, in the way of promise and in the way of threat. So the human desire to keep the future open. Advent speaks to that and evokes in us a human longing for what is to come. Okay. Another theme of Advent that is related to this to come is about the end of world. The early texts in this season talk about the end of world, and we tend to misconstrue that language of the end of world as meaning the end of the world. And that's not what's intended here. That's kind of literalizing end of world rather than hearing it as an imaginative literary figuring, okay? The end of world is the end of world as we have known it. The end of world where we live and move and have our being, the end of world here as we have known it. Because we know that it can be otherwise. So we long for the end of world as we have known it and long for it to be otherwise, the way it would be if indeed we really believe that love is stronger than hate, or nonviolence is more decisive than violence, or compassion is more liberating than retribution. So, as I said, end of world means end of world as we have known it. It invites our imagination to consider what this world would be if it could become a new creation. Okay, that's an Advent theme. So we're not talking about destroying this world, then or now. We're not saying that a new world is going to come down. We're saying we are called to reimagine what this one can be. So the new creation will not come from some divine intervention, but it will be the work of imaginative invention. And it will be up to us. And speaking of intervention, another Advent theme is the second coming. Advent is about the second coming, not the first coming. And I spent years just assuming that Advent was about the coming of Jesus. Unto us a child is born, unto us a child is given. Well, that's actually the Christmas message. Advent, the tradition has developed at the season of Advent in a way where it talks about what is coming, the second coming of Jesus, which is proclaimed, he's now proclaimed as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And, so many of our hymns in Advent talk about Jesus as, crown him with glory. Okay. So this theme of Advent it assumes a prediction that Jesus is going to come back as the King of Glory, which is not what he had in mind. So this theme of Advent, I suggest, is more propositional than it is poetic. And I think that it is actually a mistaken move on the part of the tradition, and one that we might want to rethink. The theme that I want to emphasize about the to come, okay, we don't know what's coming, okay, the acknowledging that so much of our lives are really in the non-knowing, okay. How I want the image for that non-knowing, as used in the season of Advent, is darkness. Darkness here is suggested as our non-knowing. We are a people who walk in darkness. I mean, as I said earlier, we all know, we know a lot, we know a lot, we know more and more and more all the time, but we will never fully comprehend the nature of the mystery of existence. And as I said earlier, the mystery of our own existence. So the season of Advent of the to come, I think is all about our coming to terms with our non-knowing and acknowledging that that in which we live and move and have our being is mystery. And even so, we are called to enter into it with our non-knowing. The prophet Isaiah, and he's one of the three great figures of Advent, Isaiah, John the Baptist, and Mary are the three figures of Advent. So much could be said about John the Baptist and Mary, but for now, Isaiah says, he writes in chapter 45, verse 3, I will give you the treasure, he's speaking in the name of the Lord, I will give you the treasure of darkness, and hidden riches in secret places, so that you may know that I, Yahweh, call you by name. Okay. I will give you treasure in darkness. This is part, I think, of the invitation of Advent, to enter into that darkness. The Greeks, and here's where the tradition draws on its own history and also mythology, but the Greeks were known to store their silver underground. So their stored treasure is in the depths. By inference, Isaiah calls us to the treasure in darkness as the coming of a rich experience. Darkness, the unknown, to enter that, it takes courage and trust. But the philosophers and the mystics and the poets and the prophets, they really felt that to enter the darkness was an imperative of the soul and the heart and the human being to become fully alive. And they talk about this journey of into the depths as a journey of descent, the journey into the depth dimension of our soul and our heart, where deep calls to deep. Okay, I mean, and some refuse this journey. It's not comfortable. It beckons us into the unknown. It's unpredictable. But Advent calls us to make this journey of descent into the heart of darkness, if you will. Now, when we think about descent, we might associate it with the underworld and with the god of Hades, okay? The early Christian community certainly did, okay? The early Christian writers did. Because in Greek mythology, Hades was not only the god of the underworld, but Hades was also the god of hidden wealth. And it represented a shadowy place, Hades, the underworld, where the depths, where Hades' keys were found, and they had the power to seal or to free the people in the underworld. So Isaiah draws on this mythopoetic image when he calls us to the treasure in darkness. And this journey was considered by the tradition to be a journey of affirmation. An affirmation, a willingness to go down deep into life, a willingness to respond to the call to go deep and embrace and be embraced by the depths and uncertainties and unknowns of life, to come to the nearness of the nearest place and open yourselves to a living and sense and felt experience of what it is to be alive. Rilke puts it this way: and yet, though we strain against the deadening grip of daily necessity, in other words, the grip of the everyday world and a broken world, though we strain against the deadening grip of necessity, I sense this mystery. All life is being lived. So in the dailiness, in the quotidian, in the everydayness, there is this mystery. And to open ourselves to that is part of that journey into the depths, that journey of descent. Okay. Where is life being lived? With this in mind, we learn a lot about where life is lived when we enter into the darkness. Okay. So this process is an affirmation, an acceptance of the present state of existence and the treasure in its depths. Okay. Interestingly enough, the journey of ascent, okay, aspiring to something higher, okay, which I think is very common, a common longing for all of us, to aspire to something higher. That journey was seen as a negation of the present state of existence. And interestingly enough, the journey of ascent was considered nihilistic, and the journey of descent an affirmation. It's also interesting for me to note that the mystics and the philosophers and the poets and the prophets attest that it is in a dark time that the eye begins to see poetically, metaphorically, inferentially, interiorly, and will begin also to see the shine of darkness in human life and meaning. I just find that fascinating, that it is in a dark time that the eye begins to see poetically, metaphorically, more by inference. The light, claims the tradition, is in darkness, but does not save us from it. And what will surface is the deepest energies of our imagination. And this journey will evoke a deeper orientation to our lives. And all of this was thought and wondered about and expressed before Freud and Jung. But Freud and Jung and many others know all of this too. So the to come, the unknown, our hopes and fears, our non-knowing, recognizing we are a people who walk in darkness. And there we experience, we sense, we feel in the depths something that surpasses our understanding. And that what some have called the super luminosity of the dark night. The super luminosity of the dark night, which I would suggest is the light of the world. Let me close with a poem from Rilke. I think in this poem, he insists that to fall into the depths is really not to plunge into mere nothingness. His poem is really an affirmation. And an affirmation that what awaits us is some kind of felt presence. Rilke, you darkness that I come from. Oops, that's my little beloved. Is there somebody out there? Yeah. You darkness that I come from. And we can think of this on so many levels, even the womb. Okay, but anyway, you darkness that I come from. I love you more than all the fires that fence in the world. For the fire makes a circle of light for everyone. And then outside, and then no one outside learns of you. But the darkness pulls everything in, shapes and fires, animals and myself, how easily it gathers them, powers and people. And it is possible a great energy is moving near me. I have faith in nights. I'll post this poem at the end. You darkness that I come from, I love you more than all the fires that fence in the world, for the fire makes a circle of light for everyone. And then no one outside learns of you. But the darkness pulls in everything, shapes and fires, animals and myself, and how easily it gathers them, powers and people. And it is possible a great energy is moving near me. I have faith in nights. I have faith in the darkness. Now, before we go to plenary, I would like my friend, Jeff, to share a couple of poems that I think speak more directly from the inside out of what I'm sort of playing with. And Jeff and I talked a little bit last night, and he just out of the moment came up with these two poems. And I said, oh, Jeff, I really want you to, there are two poems, there might be a verse from the hymn too, but I said, oh, I'd love you to share them because I think that it'll bring us down a little bit more into what I'm trying to describe, which is not anything new, by the way. But I think these poems will help us maybe to reflect in the plenary time. Jeff, do you want to, would you share with us some poems and whatever comments you have about them?
Sure, Marianne. I so appreciate the thing that's sticking with me from what you shared this morning is the idea that assent is so prominent in our theology, really. And assent is about rising above this world, rising above our bodies. Descent is about going into the interior. And I think these poems in particular speak to that.
And isn't it interesting that ascent is sort of nihilistic? It's life negating, right?
Yeah,
Whereas
right,
descent
right.
affirms the existence that is and says it is here in this existence,
Yeah.
if you will, in this world. That
Like if you suffer well enough in this life, you'll get to the good one.
yeah, yeah, right. As though the ultimate is yet to come, as
Yeah,
though it's somewhere else,
exactly.
as though it's not here, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, I found that really interesting too.
yeah.
Hey, Marianne, do we have a visual for this one or for these poems?
No, we don't,
Okay.
unfortunately.
No,
But I
but
think Jeff will
Just
do.
making sure.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. That's just perfect question. Jeff, can you put them in the chat?
I will put them in the chat when I'm done.
Okay, okay, perfect. And I'll make note of the titles, and maybe we'll post them next time as one of our closing slides next time. Thanks, Jake.
Yeah. So this first poem is called Winter's Cloak. It's by Joyce Rupp and Macrina Wiederkehr. Winter's Cloak. This year I do not want the dark to leave me. I need its wrap of silent stillness, its cloak of long-lasting embrace. Too much light has pulled me away from the chamber of gestation. Let the dawns come late. Let the sunsets arrive early. Let the evenings extend themselves while I lean into the abyss of my being. Let me lie in the cave of my soul, for too much light blinds me, steals the source of revelation. Let me seek solace in the empty places of winter's passage, those vast, dark nights that never fail to shelter me.
Nice.
This is actually the lyrics of a song called Dark of Winter that was written by Shelley Jackson Denham. Dark of winter. Dark of winter, soft and still, your quiet calm surrounds me. Let my thoughts go where they will, ease my mind profoundly. And then my soul will sing a song, a blessed song of love eternal. Gentle darkness, soft and still, bring your quiet to me. Darkness, soothe my weary eyes that I may see more clearly. When my heart with sorrow cries, comfort and caress me. And then my soul may hear a voice, a still small voice of love eternal. Darkness, when my fears arise, let your peace flow through me. And I'll post those, Marianne, during the play.
Yeah, that's great. And Jeff, maybe we'll, as I said, I'll post them as closing slides for in January. Okay, because that will still be speaking to where we are.
Yes.
January is the season of Epiphany. Okay, so it's sort of like what is underneath the depths. It it starts to manifest in. That's part of the Epiphany story.
Yes.
But what is required is what has happened in the depths.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shall we begin our plenary, Marianne?
Why don't we? We've got plenty of time for conversation because I'd love to hear what people are thinking and all of this. But let me just quickly go through the listening guidelines, okay? So as I'm going through this, just see what a little double tasking. You can hear the guidelines and also think about what you want to say for this time together. So take time to become settled in God's presence and listen to others during this plenary time with your entire self, with your senses and feelings and intuition and imagination and rational faculties. And, don't interrupt. A pause between speakers to absorb what's been said. Don't formulate what you want to say while someone else is speaking. Speak for yourself only and express your own thoughts and feelings. Refer to your own experiences. Avoid being hypothetical. Sometimes this is hard for us. And steer away from broad generalizations. What we're asking for is, what is your experience? What are your experiences? Don't challenge what others say. Listen to the group as a whole, to those who haven't spoken aloud as well as to those who have. Leave space for anyone who may want to speak a first time before you speak a second time. And I love this one, hold your desires and opinions, even your convictions, lightly. So that's sort of the ethos of our hospitality in our plenary time for speaking and listening.
Great.
So Jeff, help us get us underway.
Yeah, and Marianne, I'll just mention one thing because this has come up a couple of times.
Yeah.
People have asked about the possibility of saving the chat. If you are in the chat, at the very top, you'll see.
Yes, I want to know this too. Says Jeff, save me the chat, but tell me how to do it.
At the very top, you'll see that it says second Saturday, December 14th, 2024, when you click on the chat. And right next to it are three little dots. If you click on those three little dots, it gives you the option of saving the chat. And it'll save it to your desktop, I believe.
Great.
So for those
Great.
who are asking
Great.
about that, that's where that is.
Because there's some wonderful, thanks. I mean, and do save the chat for me, Jeff. And I have an opportunity to look at the chat after the fact. I don't see them during this session, but what people share on Second Saturday is just so rich and wonderful. And as you all know, I show up for you. So my favorite part of Second Saturday is the plenary. So let's get underway.
So Karen Pitcock, let's start with you. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay.
There you go.
I was touching in the wrong place. Good morning, all. Marianne, I just can't thank you enough. I wish that everything that you have said this morning could be written where I and so many other people could meditate on it. Think of it. My heart is just overflowing with connections with what you've said. And I, in all humility, a couple of things. One of the positive things that I appreciate about this tradition that has fed me for my 85 years, setting aside all of the ways I don't like the tradition anymore, is about the seasons. And Advent has for years been the most meaningful season for me. And I love it. And I've seen the seasons as being opportunities to live into exactly what you were saying, the parts of Jesus' life and the parts and connecting with our lives, that we have Advent times, we have Christmas times, we have Lenten times. And if we live deeply into those seasons, we can refine them and embrace them at the right times. We don't have to be sad all of Lent, but Lent teach us, that we will have those times. But now I'm just overflowing, but I'll try to stay a little connected here. The thing about Advent, it's such relatively a short season, and we're in a hurry. It's a season of waiting and entering the darkness, which is, if anyone else agrees with me, it's the dark times in my life when I've known the most, when I've come alive the most. Okay, I've just about run out of time, or have I? So we want, but the world. I wrote to someone, a radio broadcaster, about, because he got confused about the 12 days of Christmas being what they are. They're not the 12 days leading up to Christmas. And I've decided that there are two Christmases. There's the secular Christmas and the Christian Christmas. And anyway, we can't wait. We want to move on to Christmas, but
Right.
I'm happy waiting. And then, the solstice happens next Saturday,
Mhm.
and then we're into growing light. We don't want to stay in the darkness very long. Thank you very much. Now to hear what others have to say.
Yeah. Oh, well, Karen, thank you. And, when you say, to write up what I've said, I'm actually drawing from a lot of thoughts from elsewhere. So, there's writings about this all over the place. So, and I kind of pulled some things together in my own thinking. I also just want to piggyback quickly on the seasons. I agree with you. I think that the seasons is such a rich way of understanding the narratives of Jesus for us. Okay, and some of us, and you spoke to this. I mean, we might have Advent in April. And interiorly, we might experience Easter in midwinter. We might experience Pentecost, in fall. So, but I think that when you are in a season in your own life that mirrors the season of the church year, and if you're part of a church community, it has an additional kind of power for you. So for those of you who are in Advent, hold on. But it can have additional power. But I agree. I think the seasons are mirror aspects of our own human condition and development. So thanks, Karen, so much. Oh, Jeff, you're unmuted.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I had a barking dog I was trying to mute out.
You say you had a farting dog?
Barking.
A barking dog. There is
Bark.
Walter the Farting Dog, which is a fabulous series of children's books.
It is.
The Farting Dog. It's all about self-esteem. I
Yeah.
highly recommend. Back to
Jim,
you.
hi. Jim.
Good morning, Mary Ann.
Good morning, Jim. I owe you some communication.
Well, I'm waiting on it. I'll wait a lot whenever you have time.
All right, good.
I have three quick things.
Great.
I was reading the other day and ran across somebody that pointed out that all life is conscious in some form. Even your plants in the yard and the trees and the bugs that bother you and mosquitoes, they're all conscious in some form. And humans are the most conscious of all because we've evolved our brain up here the most of anything. That's where the consciousness comes from. Then the second thing I wanted to say is that I have a quote here from Alan Watts that I think is very, very important. And I'm just very short.
Okay.
He says, "The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, and yet everyone rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves." And I really like that.
I do too.
And the last thing I'll say is I think everybody needs to take a deep dive into the evolution, into Darwin's marvelous step forward in our understanding. We evolved, and we are still evolving.
I hope so.
We could even evolve during the Advent time.
Indeed. Indeed, we evolved during Advent time. I agree. Thank you, Jim. I think that's all very helpful. And, you know, Rilke, it's a poem that I'm going to post as one of our closing poems, but he says, you know, God is living. Where is God? God is living.
In life.
God is living in life. That's
Right. God is in
rather
life.
than God is living in life as God is a pronoun. You can think of God is living in life as God is living in life.
Right.
And I think that's just what you said.
Yeah.
And you are doing the same.
Yeah.
I'm so
Thank
glad.
you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Ed Wales, Ed.
Oh, Ed, you need to unmute. You need to unmute.
Shows that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you for some reason. Yeah, it's strange. It's showing it that you're unmuted, Ed, but we can't hear you.
Okay. See
Okay.
if you can work that out and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, yeah. Susan D'Amico, Susan.
Morning. Hello, everyone. Hi, Marianne. Hi,
Oh,
Jeff.
nice
Hi.
to see you, Susan.
Everything was just lovely. It hit all the points of, as you always do, what I'm feeling but cannot say, and bringing in such wonderful quotes from Marcus's book, which I'm going to get because I haven't seen that one before. This section you talked about, Isaiah, and the choosing to enter the depths of darkness, I think echoes Joseph Campbell in accepting the call into the shadowy place. And that as a journey of affirmation and an acceptance of the treasure in its depths is just ringing bells for me. And the idea of metaphor and inference and interiority and seeing the shine in the darkness made me think of the times I take my dog out at night before bed, and I always look up and look at the stars, and there's a planet hanging around Orion, and Betelgeuse is shining, and the moon is coming into fullness, and the solstice is coming. It's all just sort of coalescing into a wonderful sense of getting away from the glitter and glamour that the commercial season puts forth to us. And so if you take a time away and listen to the mushrooms and the leaves and the wind and so forth, it's just such wonderful things. And all of these poems, Jeff and Marianne, I'm going to look up. There's a lovely poem by Joe Henry, who was he wrote some songs for John Denver. It was never published or recorded. It was sung at one of John Denver's memorials, called Ascension. It's a little hard to find, but it speaks about these kinds of things, and the whole idea of ascension and ascent versus descent speaks to me particularly as someone with disabilities and being set back from the achievement orientedness of our culture. So I really appreciate the philosophy and the intent of that position. Merry Christmas, and thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, Susie, you're so welcome. It's always, I'm just so glad you're here, and I always appreciate what catches you and how you talk about it. So, and you know, you're right, Joseph Campbell. I mean, there are so many people that do wonderful, wonderful work around this very thing that I'm talking about, and trying to give some credit to the Christian tradition for knowing about it too. So, thanks, Susie. Have a good Christmas to you too.
Yeah, thanks. Lynn Tolk. Hi, Lynn.
Hey. Hello. Oh, much, much, much gratitude. This whole period has been filled with gratitude for the darkness. And my very first experience of God was at a time of extreme darkness, when all of a sudden I gave in to despair, and all of a sudden I was simply held in compassion. But this particular time of year, you know, I do look forward to this introspective period and meditation, which has been my salvation. I've been doing it for, I don't know, a few decades now. But last week, my book discussion group was discussing Marcus's book, Convictions, and
Excellent.
having a great time with it.
Excellent.
Well,
Thank
the
you.
topic,
Thank you for sharing that and being here.
the topic that came up was always a hard one for me. It's the topic of atonement, that Jesus died in order to rescue us from our sinful condition. And I never cared for that particular doctrine. And I thought I came to terms with it and thought,
It's a late development, you know, it came around in the 1000s. So
yeah, I
it's-
know, but
a
it's
late development.
nevertheless, it's extremely potent right now.
And back to you. Sorry, Lynn. Mhm.
Okay, so I was brought up without a church, any church. My mother had an aversion to church. And in her words, she said, my relationship with God is nobody else's business. So it wasn't talked about. And I just proceeded to, you know, develop my own relationship to God as a child. And it was lovely. God always listened. And I felt accepted. But I never felt accepted by all those people out there who didn't think the same way I did. So anyway, what I ended up doing was when all these feelings came up that I thought I had put to rest, I sat down and journaled 2 pages and went into all the dark feelings I had, all the anger that I had, all the grief that I had, and came out, you know, right where I had thought I was at the beginning. And it just all of a sudden was perfectly clear. Oh, okay.
Wow.
I can be who I am, and others can be who they are, and all we have to do is to love each other and allow each other.
Mm.
So that was light out of darkness for me.
No kidding. Yeah. And, you know, that's the kind of light that can save the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So thank you, Lynn. Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lynn.
And I think that, you know, I mean, it'll be interesting to hear other people's experiences, but that entrance into darkness, I mean, I too have, I mean, I make that journey quite often. And when you are entering it, though, I still sort of have this sense of, but is the abyss just going to be emptiness?
Yeah.
And I think that's a very real sort of existential thing that we go through. It's like, well, you know, but what I think the tradition affirms is, and what the poets and mystics affirm, is that there is a kind of shining in the dark. And I think that that's capital R real.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Might be another synonym for God.
Yeah. And then that too, I mean, it changes everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, Lynn, thank you. And yeah, thanks to your book club too for reading Convictions. Oh, and also for realizing that really love is the way.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you, Lynn.
thanks. Jel.
Yes. When you were started out, I got 2 theopoetic, what I call theopoetical sayings or mystical occurred to me. One by Meister Eckhart and one by Antonius Silesius. Says, "O Gabriel, what good is your message to Marie unless it can also be given to me?"
Nice.
And the
Just
other
say that
one,
again, Del. Say that again. I think that's lovely.
"O Gabriel, what good is your message to Marie unless it can also be given to me?" And in the same way, I think it was Cilicia said, "Jesus could be born 10,000 times in Bethlehem, but unless the Christ is born in your heart, you're still lost."
Mhm.
And then I think the greatest poets about darkness are Simon and Garfunkel, hello darkness, my old friend, I've come to speak with you again about a vision softly fleeting. People talking without speaking, it's, I think, for those of us of that generation, it said a lot.
Yeah.
And then finally, another comment, our book group is currently reading The Road to Wisdom by Francis Collins. And there was something on one of the chapters by G.K. Chesterton, which really stood out to me. The Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and not tried. So there's so many thoughts that just filled my mind when you were talking, when Jeff was reading the poem. I just want to thank you a lot for the opportunity to listen.
And oh, you're so welcome, Jel. And what really catches me is that Jeff's poems and just talking about this stuff in this way evokes this in you.
Yeah.
And I think that's illustrative of something, okay, that I think is going on. But this it evoked these things in you. It's sort of like deep speaking to deep, and it's all here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet, as Susie was saying, the bright, shiny objects of the culture, distract us into thinking that, what is Christmas, for them? But the tradition actually in its depths has some great insights, human insights, of our longing and our hope.
Yeah, it's like the Simon and Garfunkel song, about the neon lights, the bright things that take you into something, the truths are written on the walls of the tenement halls, that sort of thing, getting down to the basics.
Yeah.
Don't be distracted by the shiny thing over here or the shiny thing over there.
Right.
You got to enter the depths, the darkness, to figure out what is true and what is you.
Darkness, my old friend.
Yes.
Nice.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Ed, I see your hand up again. Have you figured out your sound?
Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that's good.
I think you figured it out. Great.
All right. All right. So jumping right in. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went up higher. That's what this conversation reminds me of, is that song. And I'm thinking about, Johnny Cash emerged from the fire. And so we are all called to have a focus on transcendence. And we are not only called to have a focus on it, but it's in our nature. We are transcendent. We're always seeking higher levels of consciousness through evolution and unity on what I would call a dimly lit path. And one of the ways that we can experience that or see it is that that unity was brought to mind early this morning in a news article about the contamination of the upper Columbia River above Grand Coulee Dam. It's now a EPA Superfund site. And because of contamination from upriver mills, metallurgical mills that spewed their contamination downstream. And so now we're all affected. So it reminds me again, this concept of unity transcends artificial borders. We are all connected. We are all influenced by what each of us does. And then I guess I would close on this concept of imagination requires consciousness. A little bit of what Jim High was talking about. We are evolving as a species into higher levels of consciousness. We haven't arrived at the end game yet. And Jesus encourages us to have faith and imagination, to let it be done on earth as it is in heaven, where heaven is perceived as perfection. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, interesting. Yes, this is so interesting, Ed, because you make me think about a number of things, and indeed the problem, I think, of transcendence, because I think that transcendence and immanence, it's just sort of like the light shining in the darkness. I think transcendence is actually found in the immediate. Okay, and that it isn't really a hierarchical thing, but that this is the conundrum of transcendence. That yes, I think that there are things that transport us and that transcend, but the curious thing is that the transcendent is found in the quotidian, in the everyday. And I love what you said about we're all connected, and so that I think is part of our challenge. And when we talk about mystical things or the tradition or whatever, is thinking about ascent, descent in the way that, if ascent is denying the importance of the where we are, that can be a negation of not a healthy sort, so you help me to realize, okay, there's a complexity here, talking about what do we mean by transcendence and immanence and all of that stuff. So great.
Thanks, Ed. Yolanda.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Part of why I'm so drawn to show up every month is because I really, really miss a spiritual director, a Dominican nun, Mary Neal, who was in my life, most of my life, begging me to look at the dark and begging me to, encouraging me to look at the shadow. And she loved Thomas Merton and quoted him often. And one of her directees wrote a song about, I think it's based on a poem that he wrote. And so all I can remember is the refrain of the song. So I'll just sing the refrain.
Great.
Love winter when the plant says nothing. Low barren branches touching snow. Love winter when the plant says nothing. Oh, love, silently grow. Oh, oh. Thank you for all of this. It means so much.
Before the sermon, the hymn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love winter. Love darkness, if we dare.
Thanks, Yolanda.
Yeah, Yolanda, thank you for helping our molecules shimmer.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for all you do here. Keeps our hearts open.
That's part of our task. And Yolanda, come sing for us again, all right?
I'd love to. Thanks.
Yeah.
Clear.
Hi, I meant to change it to Kimberly. Thank you so much to both of you. Marianne, you always bring so many thoughts forward, and I think of the metaphors, how they stick. And Marcus, over 30 years ago in college, saying the wombishness of God and the buoyancy of God, and how those are still a part of my prayers. Yolanda, thank you for your singing. It just sort of plucks me and places me right in something that I'm not going to put a word to. But this first part, I took a few notes on my phone, Marianne, and I had before the meaning making, the meditation, before the practicalities, the prayer.
Mhm.
Before the doctrine, the dance.
Nice.
Um, and then I had a thought about my dear friend who was raised in a very literal church. And she told me the other day she couldn't watch the sunrise or the sunset because she was so worried about the rapture that she would be taken and her animals wouldn't. And so this descent, I think, also can help us so much. I've been thinking about environmentalism and to really sink down into what nature has to offer us in the poetic, not just the practicalities. How much money can we make off of these trees, or how much energy can we get off of these rivers? But the poetic. And then I also wondered about the Democratic Party, and if maybe we hadn't risen such ascent to joy, and even though that feels so good, if we'd come down, I say we, but if whatever, one line of politics had come down a little more, maybe that would have spoken to a lot of darkness that is needing hope. Anyway, if that, however you can make sense of any of that. Thank you, Marianne.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I deeply, deeply appreciate what you're saying. Yeah. You know, it's sort of the, you know, the whole authentic experience of being human. It's vast and varied.
Mhm.
I love your, you know, before the pragmatic or whatever. Can you write that up and put that in the chat?
Oh, sure. Thank you.
You know, and sign it, you know, Kimberly. But, and why don't you just repeat that for us one more time?
Sure. Let me pull it up on my phone again.
I love what you've done with that.
Thank you. Before the meaning making, the meditation. Before the practicalities, the prayer. Before the doctrine, the dance.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that Amos Wilder is calling us to return to the meditation, to the prayer, to the dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Kate Gibbs.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for today. Good message on Marianne, and good to see you.
Thank you.
I guess I haven't been, like I've said before, I haven't been with church. Like I didn't grow up in a church family, and then I had some friends who were churchgoers, but very, very evangelical. So I had quite the journey with church, and I had to come back from that eventually. And now I'm in a really good place with church and Christianity. And I think part of the reason that I wanted to come back to church was because of because of Christmas and the meaning of Christmas. And I've always loved Christmas and the magic it brings in the carols. After Remembrance Day or Veterans Day, I start worrying about how many days before it would be appropriate for me to listen to Christmas music. Because well, few people think November is way too early. But I was just, especially this year and years past, when the songs talk about like Christmas is about, peace on earth and peace coming to earth, and that's one of my.
Yeah.
I love that song with the little drummer boy in the peace on earth part.
Yeah.
I forget who sings it, but, and you know, the Stevie Wonder song on about someday at Christmas. But, you know, it feels like, you know, after the First World War and the Second World War, they were always singing about songs of peace. And it's
Wow.
feels like it's a long time coming with,
Wow.
you know, because the way the world works, something will always come up. And so it's
Wow.
sometimes hard singing those songs when peace isn't hurriedly on its way. And but at the same time, it still makes you feel good because it fills you with that hope and that peace.
I love that.
Mm.
And I love that returning to church, that in a sense, Christmas called you. You know, this,
Yeah,
yes, there is light in the world, that the world can be otherwise, that there can be peace on earth, that it's like you've returned to that hopefulness. Um, and then we do everything we can to make it so, to make it true, to make it true, you know?
Mm.
And so I just love the fact that that was sort of part of your call in a way to return to church. And it's like, yes, Kate, you know, you are part of what can make this true. So we wait, and yet we act in such a way that we can make the hope of the world as true as it can be, even now. So
yeah.
thanks for being part of that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's and difficult, but
It is very difficult. Yeah.
yeah,
We
that
need each
waiting
other
for
to just encourage us to say, no, this is not in vain, you know. It's hope against hope, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
Kate.
Christmas to you too. Merry Christmas.
Sandra.
Yes, here and I'm a grateful person here. Thank you. It's not only thanking you, Marianne and Jeff, but just everybody who's commented
I
today. And
I agree.
I also wanted to say something just that I was just almost brought to tears with your talk this morning about the darkness. And let me quickly put it in personal context. I had eye surgery earlier this week, and it was just cataract surgery. And the thing about it is to be able to see better in the dark, right? And not be distracted so by the light of cars driving by and that kind of thing. And then just last night, I have 2 little dogs, and it's like the last thing at night, and I'm kind of a night person. I take them outside, and I always go outside with them, and it's like being in that dark and looking out. And I've always thought of myself as a summer person, but I looked out and saw the bare trees, still the evergreens in there, but the bare trees in the dark. And I just had such great appreciation for it last night. And just that treasure. And then when you were talking and started this morning, and I thought, it just hit me like this big, it's like how the whole Christmas thing and the family thing and how we do it is all this seeking for the light and seeking for the light. And then, you know, the whole commercialism that goes on with Christmas and all the seeking for the light. And it's like, I just had such a strong feeling, but I appreciate and do love the darkness and what it allows to happen inside.
Mm.
Yeah, Sandra, that puts so well. Yeah. Yeah, and this may sound paradoxical, and this may not be quite right, but we may be looking for the light in the wrong places.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, and may we all find the wisdom and the love and the light in the darkness this season.
Thanks, Sandra.
Lovely. What a nice benediction for us, Sandra.
Yes, yes. Edward.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's been a while. I'm glad to be back, and I think it must have been a still small voice that brought me back, because I love your perspective on darkness. Not only do we all live in a rushed and overfilled world, those of us, and I'm speaking from my own experience, who have ADHD, have a double whammy. Not only are we rushed from outside, we're rushed from inside also. Yet when I crash and experience the darkness and the dark night of my soul, I am suddenly stopped. And that is when I hear and see more clearly.
Mm.
Wow.
Mm.
So I just wanted to share that, and I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
Mm.
Glad to have you back. And
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that, because that's its own affirmation, isn't it?
It is. It is.
It's not comfortable. It's getting there is not easy, but I hear what you're saying as describing a kind of affirmation in the midst of the discomfort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Do we have time for one more, Marianne? Cheryl's been here for quite a while.
Yes, let's do that.
Cheryl?
Hi there. It's very quick, hopefully. The darkness, I had an experience back in the 70s when I said, God, are you real? Or I'm going to go put all my money in the athletic club, play tennis and all that kind of stuff. And during the meditations, you go to this very deep spot where there's no sound, no taste, no feeling, absolutely nothing. You can't even describe what you experience until you start to come out, and you know what you know deep down in there. And God said to me, don't panic, I'm really here. And but that is the darkness, and it takes you beyond all of your senses, any words, any explanation. And for me, that darkness has always been my old friend.
Wow.
And that's it. To you.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love it. Don't panic.
Yeah.
No, I'm really here. And it reminds me of Rilke, and is it possible that a great energy is moving near me?
Mhm, mhm,
I have faith in the nights,
mhm,
like
mhm.
you have experienced that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks, Cheryl.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Marianne, I think I'll let you close. There's a couple other hands up, but we can maybe address those in the coffee hour if they can stay.
That would be lovely. Yes, for those who can, we'll have about a 15-minute coffee time, which, as has happened, it ends up being sort of an extension of our sharing. But if you can, that would be great. We'll call on you then. So, as I was just saying to Cheryl, you darkness, it is possible a great energy is moving near me. I have faith in nights, NIGHTS, nights. Thank you all so much for what you've shared and how you've shared, and how you've, deepened and moved this conversation. I mean it when I say my favorite part of Second Saturday is the plenary. Gathering with you makes a difference for me, and I'm so glad we have each other. So thank you so much for being here. Our next Second Saturday will be January 11th. We'll be in 2025, and we will be in the season of Epiphany. And I'm going to explore Jesus as an epiphany of darkness, maybe as an epiphany of that super luminosity of darkness. Our closing music for today is, I wish I had thought about doing Simon and Garfunkel. That would have been perfect. But perhaps the next best thing, I'm pulling from the Messiah. It's actually from Isaiah 9:2. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. And I have chosen a bass baritone from Canada. His name is Philippe Sly, S-L-Y. And I think that his rendering of this is I think he's just exquisite. And it's a little over 5 minutes. So it's about 5 minutes, 47 seconds, something like that. So it's a long closing music, but I will post 2 poems of Rilke's and our poem for this year from Emily Dickinson, I Dwell in Possibility. And so I encourage you to take in the music from Isaiah 9:2. We are a people who walk in darkness, but have seen a great light. And for those who can stay for coffee time, that'll be great. And do welcome Advent whenever it calls to you. Thank you so much for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.